Hello, folks. The Y Guy here. Welcome to my home on this very cold winter day. I mean, he looks a lot bigger because he's closer to the camera than he really is. So he's still just a little baby. Okay. That's little Ollie, by the way. The last time I shared Ollie on my video, he was just a little bitty guy that I held up on my lap and held him at the camera. Now he's, wow. And only 7 months old. That Anatolian shepherd that's in him, I think, is what's giving him his height. Anyway, the name of this video is called "The Y Guy Was Accused of Being Deceitful." You know, on Facebook, I was recently accused of being deceitful when responding to someone's request for the 75-plus passages of Scripture that points out that God was going to save and reconcile all of creation to Himself. You know, we're all accustomed to being accused, you know, of being deceitful and or deceived and all that. You know, we're kind of used to that. This approach is just a little bit different. And that's why I thought I would do a video about it, in case somebody happens to use these verses, these passages that I want to share with you. They happen to use those to still kill and destroy a trust in God that you might have. Okay? And I just want to offer some encouragement. All right? So anyway, I randomly listed those 75-plus verses, various verses, you know, and shared them with this person who requested them. And I didn't care about any order or significance. I didn't do it intentionally, but the very first one on my list just so happened to be John 12:47. Just happened to be. Which reads as this: "I do not judge anyone who hears my words and does not keep them, for I came not to judge the world, but to save the world." And by the way, when Jesus was saying this, it wasn't conditional anywhere in context upon believing or anything, all right? Well, someone just else jumped in, as they normally do, okay, on social media, and they wrote, they wrote, quote, "The first passage cited was John 12:47." And it seems that citing it without the next verse, in 48, is deceitful. I would have used different words, you know, if I was responding to somebody, but that was this guy, okay? He then included his infamous 48th passage, and which reads as this: "He who rejects me and does not receive my words has one who judges him. The word that I have spoken shall judge him in the last day." So apparently this verse here, verse 48, completely negates what Jesus previously stated in verse 47, right? That's what he was, listen on, okay? Because that's what he was basically saying. Let me see, where was it? To bring it home, though, to bring it home, at least in his mind, he then contradicted what Jesus said by saying, quote, "We are going to be judged according to the words of Yeshua," according to the words Yeshua spoke. His words, teaching, commands, are the same as his Father's, close quote. Well, as a means to justify the contradiction, he then went to another verse, which I didn't have listed, John 3:36, which reads, "He who believes in the Son possesses everlasting life, but he who does not obey the Son shall not see life, but the wrath, don't forget that word wrath, the wrath of Elohim remains on him." Most Bibles read the wrath of God, but he chose to use the word Elohim when he was quoting it, okay? You know, here's a side note, speaking of that. Do you notice how some religious Christians like to use Jewish names and words like Yeshua and Elohim? Some do it out of love and respect, which is admirable, okay? While others do it as a means to sound more knowledgeable and superior, which is not admirable. Well, anyway, regardless. Before explaining how I define these passages that someone felt important enough to point out, while completely disregarding the other 75-plus verses, irony, let's define deceitful, since that's the word he used, by using its synonyms of untruthful, lying, insincere, and false. You know, am I the only one seeing this? But I perceived it as this guy was making a judgment call of my heart and motive. Maybe not. Not only that, but he was straining gnats by ignoring the other 75-plus passages. This verse, the verses, I should say, that surround John 12:47 that I initially quoted, it doesn't take away any of the truth of what Jesus said. And I'll prove it. Let's get into the technical mud just for a moment. we need to know what Jesus was talking about when using the word judgment in this context, right? It means sifting and refining from the Spirit of God. And in this context, how does God's Spirit do that? Answer: simply by convicting our hearts and minds. That's all that judgment means in this case and in this context. More on that in a moment. But let's first examine verse 48, which he said, remember, initially said that if I didn't include verse 48, I was being deceptive by just quoting verse 47. So anyway, here's refresh the memory of verse 48. He who rejects me and does not receive my words has one who judges him. The word that I have spoken shall judge him. See, that's the second time it's been used, in the last day. Okay. The one who does the judging in this passage is speaking of the Spirit of God that lives within us, since the word one is capitalized and is further clarified in verse 49. So I went ahead and continued. Okay. First, here's how verse 48 reads in the Koine Greek versus the one I just quoted you from perverted Latin-based Bibles. Koine Greek, quote, the person habitually displacing, disregarding, rejecting, or setting aside me, and not progressively taking in hand and receiving or getting the things which I have spoken, is constantly having the one, with the capital O, continuously evaluating and judging him. The word which I speak, and here's what defines judgment, that one will sift, divide out, separate, evaluate, and make a decision about him within the last day. And here's to further clarify who the one is in verse 49, because I myself do not speak out of the midst of myself, but to the contrary, the one, capital O, sending me. Who's the one? And it continues by saying, the Father. Okay, himself has given and implanted a goal to me, what I could say and what I will speak. Close Jesus' quote. Okay? Well, come close to a close here. In this context, judgment simply means that the Spirit of God is going to continuously sift, evaluate, refine, and convict us in this life. And convicting in the Koine Greek means to bring to mind, as in bridging God's thoughts to our own. So, remember how I said that he used John 3:36 as a means to justify a contradiction? Here's a refresher. Quote, he who believes in the Son possesses everlasting life. No, it doesn't say that. But he who does not obey the Son shall not see life. Ooh. But the wrath of Elohim, remains on him. Close quote. Folks, this is not a contradiction, but a horrible translation. And ironically, it's an actual confirmation of what I'm trying to expose in this video. The John 3:36 passage is referring to even a stronger conviction. That's why it used the term, or they pervertedly used the term, wrath of Elohim. It's stronger conviction because in the Koine Greek, it's referring to an inherent fervor. That's how it's written in the Greek. Inherent fervor. Not the wrath of Elohim, not the wrath of God, as a perverted Latin-based Bible states. Now here it is, that same verse of John 3:36 from the Koine Greek. Quote, the one is a small o, meaning us, the one habitually trusting into the Son is constantly holding and progressively having Aeonian life. And Aeonian life means, I'm breaking off from the quotes here, Aeonian life simply means a quality of life, a vivified life. And it's referring to, in context, to the here and now, not everlasting life, not the life beyond this time. Okay, well actually it does include that. It's a vivified life that starts now and will continue for an eternity. Okay, that's where the mess up comes in. All right, where was I? I'm going to start over. The one habitually trusting into the Son is constantly holding and progressively having Aeonian life. Yet the person continually being unpersuaded by the Son will not catch sight of this life. Of what life? Of quality, of vivified life in the here and now. It's so practical. It's so cool. Okay, practical and cool was not part of the verse. Anyway, it will not catch sight of this life. To the contrary, God's inherent fervor. And that's how it reads, inherent fervor. Inherent is defined as characteristic attribute. And fervor is defined as intense and passionate feelings. Look those words up. While wrath is defined as extreme anger. In other words, in closing this video, it is part of God's character to have an intense and passionate feelings towards us. That's part of his character. The only deception here that I was accused of is how this guy and most Christians have been deceived into believing that God has extreme anger towards us, and then considers that as defining his judgment. Anyway, look me up on Facebook if you'd like. I have a avatar name. Give me a thumbs up too before we continue. I'll wait. Okay. What was I saying? Oh yeah, look me up on Facebook. I sometimes entertain myself. I can't help it. My wife always accuses me of, did that entertain you? It didn't entertain me. Anyway, look me up on Facebook under a group called the WIGA Group, a private group. I ask 3 questions of you to join, myself and the admins and moderators, I should say, not just moi. And I have an open public timeline under the name of John Anthony Jones. On this YouTube channel, if you haven't already, give me a thumbs up like I smart aleckly asked you to do a moment ago, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. And what else? Scroll down in the Show Me More section. There are 6 links down there. Actually, I think there's 7 now. I think I included one. YouTube offered to give me my own URL. What is URL? I don't know, but they offered it and I took it, which means they pretty much gave me my own name for the channel. And check it out. Take a look. I just recently changed it, or included it in the Show Me More section. So go ahead and scroll down, take a peek at that, and you'll see links to Patreon. And by the way, I'm going to give a shout out. I didn't get permission to use his name. So anyway, just his first name, Damon, my new Patreon supporter as of this morning. And well, at the time of me recording this, not necessarily this morning when you guys are going to see it. Anyway, thank you, Damon, for becoming a Patreon supporter. What else? Thank you so much for viewing.